Try to remember the last time you ran into an old friend or a relative you hadn't seen in a while. What's the first question they usually ask? It's almost always something like, "What are you doing these days? How much do you make? Got a partner yet?" Right? And almost instinctively, you already know how to answer in a way that pleases them. But have you ever stopped to ask yourself, why do I always have to please other people? Why do I have to live under their gaze? Why do I have to perform a more successful, more polished version of myself, when deep down, I'm not even sure that's who I really am? And if one day you no longer had to perform for anyone, no longer had to give the answer others wanted to hear, how would you actually want to live? To explore that question, today, we'll dive into one of Carl Jung's most powerful ideas, the idea that your life only truly begins the moment you find yourself. But what does finding yourself actually mean? And how do you tell the difference between your true self and the mask you've been wearing for far too long? Persona, when the mask lives your life for you. To answer that question, the first layer we need to look at is the mask itself. Every time you meet an old acquaintance, every time someone asks, "What are you doing now?" or "How much are you earning?" you're not just answering a question. In that moment, you're choosing which version of yourself to bring forward. The version that's tired, lost, unsure of what it wants, or the more put-together version that puts other people at ease? Most of us pick the second version without even thinking. You might be unstable, but your mouth still says, "I'm doing fine." You might be completely lost, but you smile and say, "Everything's steady." You might be unhappy with your job, but you describe it as if it were the perfect choice. And the things you project outward aren't because you're being deliberately fake. It's because, for a long time now, you've learned that certain answers make life easier. Carl Jung called this outer shell the persona, the face you show to the world. It's the dutiful child role at home, the professional employee at work, the cheerful friend in your group, the well-mannered grown-up at family gatherings. These faces are like mental clothing you put on every time you step outside. And honestly, the mask isn't entirely a bad thing. It helps you communicate, fit in, and not have to expose all your fragility to everyone you meet. The problem starts when you wear the mask so long that you forget you're performing. You get so used to being the strong one that you no longer know how to say, "I need help." You get so used to being the understanding one that you don't dare say, "I'm hurting." You get so used to being the cheerful one that when sadness comes, even your own emotions feel like a nuisance. At that point, the mask isn't just helping you function in society, it has started living your life for you. And slowly, a quiet gap opens up. The gap between the person you're performing as and the person you actually are inside. On the outside, you still answer smoothly, smile at the right moments, say all the right things. But on the inside, you start losing touch with what you actually want. You can't tell which choices are truly yours and which are choices born from the fear of disappointing someone else. So finding yourself doesn't begin with some grand, dramatic answer. It usually begins with a quiet recognition. This is the role I've been playing. This is the mask I've worn too long just to be accepted. Only when you can see the mask can you go deeper, find your own life, and live as the real person you've been ignoring for too long. Shadow. The person you despise most is a mirror of you. If the persona is the version of you others see, the shadow is the part you don't want anyone to see, the part even you refuse to acknowledge. It's where all the emotions, traits, and desires you've rejected end up banished because you feared being judged as ugly or unkind. The strangest thing about the shadow is that it rarely shows up directly. It reveals itself through the people who irritate you the most. Jung called this projection What you most despise in others is often a piece of yourself you've thrown into the dark cellar of your soul. Picture a familiar scenario. You've always been proud of being reasonable, sacrificing for the team, never daring to say no. Then a new colleague shows up with the complete opposite style. They openly demand their rights. They refuse overtime. Sorry, that's not in my scope. They leave on time even when the whole office is still working. And you, the one who's quietly absorbed extra work for years without ever pushing back, suddenly feel a wave of irritation rising. How can this person be so selfish, so unmindful of the team? But what's really behind that anger? You don't actually hate this colleague. You hate the freedom and self-priority that you've forbidden yourself for years, just to keep your good person mask intact. When someone dares to do what you've never let yourself do, the shadow inside you bristles with envy and wounded pride. But the shadow doesn't only contain things like anger or selfishness. According to Jung, the dark cellar also holds forgotten gold. Creative potential, decisiveness, sharp intuition, qualities you suppressed just to please the majority. Think of a child who's full of personality and conviction, but is constantly scolded for being stubborn or disobedient. That child gradually locks away their power in exchange for love. As an adult, they become meek, lifeless, fragile in the face of difficulty, because they're spending so much energy guarding the cellar instead of reclaiming the firmness they need to stand up for themselves. So, finding yourself at this layer doesn't mean giving yourself permission to be a bad person. It means learning to be a person who lives honestly with themselves. Instead of pretending to be an angel without a dark side, start having a conversation with your anger, your envy, your desire, and listen to what they're trying to tell you. That's how you reclaim power from the shadow and become genuinely steady. Because someone who knows they're capable of anger and chooses calm is 1,000 times stronger than someone who is calm only because they're afraid of themselves. Anima and Animus, the parts of you we're taught to hide from childhood. Continuing deeper into the psyche, we arrive at a layer that holds the fragments you were probably taught to feel ashamed of, or to hide, from a very young age. Jung called this the balance between two core energies inside every human being, anima and animus. Think back to when you were a child. Society and family, often without meaning to, use certain stereotypes to mold your soul into a specific shape. If you're male, you've probably heard things like, "What kind of man cries that easily?" Or, "How will you ever shoulder anything in life if you're that soft?" To be acknowledged as a real man, you had to throw your sensitivity, your empathy, your intuition into a hidden corner. Jung called the suppressed feminine energy in men the anima. When a man rejects his anima for too long, he might appear hard and successful on the outside, but inside he becomes barren, unable to connect deeply with others, and prone to sudden emotional storms he himself can't explain. If you're female, you might have been told, girls should be gentle, well-mannered, don't be so combative or assertive. To become a good woman in the world's eyes, you had to lock away your decisiveness, your logic, your capacity for action. Jung called this buried masculine energy the animus. A woman disconnected from her animus often feels weak, dependent, in need of someone to lean on, or struggles to make big decisions alone. She may be very intelligent, but her inner voice is full of doubt and a lack of faith in her own abilities. Finding yourself at this stage means bringing those stolen fragments of soul home. Jung believed no one is purely masculine or purely feminine. A truly strong man isn't one who never cries. He's one who uses empathy to direct his strength. A truly resilient woman is one who uses decisiveness and reason to protect what she loves. When you start to harmonize these two energies, something shifts. You stop seeing the world through the narrow lens of men should be like this, women should be like that. You can be decisive at work and tender in your relationships at the same time. At this point, the story is no longer just about understanding yourself. It becomes about freeing yourself from the gender cages you were locked into as a child. You realize that to truly live a meaningful life, you need both wings, one for action and reason, one for deep feeling. Ego and self. Who's really steering your life? Imagine your mind as a ship drifting on a vast ocean. The ego is the captain on deck. The ego's job is to observe reality, steer the ship around icebergs, and keep everything functioning in the outer world. The ego gives you personal identity. It lets you know your name, your job, what you need to do to survive. But the biggest mistake most of us make is believing this captain is the sole owner of the ship. In reality, the ego is just a hired manager. The true owner is the self. The self is the entire ocean, the ship itself, the captain, and the destination the ship is sailing toward all at once. While the ego cares about things like, how do I look successful? Or, how do I avoid being judged? The self pushes you toward bigger questions. What was I born for? What actually makes my existence meaningful? The tragedy of most lives begins when the ego gets arrogant. It locks the bridge, refuses to listen to the self, and convinces itself it can control everything. When you live entirely from ego, you get pulled into a vortex of comparison, fear of failure, and a desperate hunger for outside validation. You might achieve every form of success society defines, and still feel a strange, hollow emptiness inside. That emptiness is the cry of the self after being ignored too long. Finding yourself at this stage isn't about destroying the ego. You still need a captain to interface with the world. It means teaching the ego to serve the self. Instead of asking, what do people want me to do? Start asking, what is the deeper part of me trying to lead me toward? When the ego lets go of control and accepts its role as servant to the self, you'll experience a peace you've never known. You stop chasing flashy goals to fill the ego, and you start walking the path of your own destiny. That's the moment your real life begins. You no longer need to be impressive, strong, or admirable in everyone's eyes. You just need to learn to listen to the most authentic part of yourself and stay loyal to it day after day. Wholeness, choosing integrity over the illusion of perfection. Jung once said something that has woken up many people. I would rather be whole than good. It sounds backwards, but this is the actual key to freedom. Psychologically, to become perfect, your mind has to perform a constant amputation. You keep what society applauds and shove everything labeled inadequate into the unconscious. When you try to be the always positive person, you put enormous pressure on negative emotions like sadness or anger. The harder you chase perfection, the more fragmented your soul becomes. You're like a house with an immaculate living room, but a basement full of trash and cracks. Like a friend of mine. She always tried to maintain the image of being successful and positive. On social media, her photos were radiant, her captions inspiring. But behind that perfection was a soul running on empty. Some nights she'd sit motionless, feeling a nameless sadness, but never daring to call anyone. The image protection mechanism in her mind kept warning her, if you admit you're stuck, the ideal version of you've built will collapse. So she stayed locked inside the cage of her own goodness. Until one day, the suppression cracked open. The moment she broke down crying and admitted, I'm exhausted, I don't even know what I'm doing with my life anymore. That was the moment the perfect mask finally fell. And then wholeness began to operate. Where perfection is rejection, wholeness is integration. It's like bringing the broken pieces from the basement up into the light, cleaning them off and accepting them as part of the house. Wholeness means accepting the entire picture of your life, the wins and the awful stumbles. It's the moment you realize you're allowed to be weak, allowed to be wrong. When you stop sorting your emotions into good and bad, Your mind no longer has to spend enormous energy guarding and concealing dark corners. That energy gets freed up so you can actually live with strength. And when you live truthfully with your own emotions, the people around you feel closer to you, love you more, because human beings connect through honesty, not through polished statues. This is when life truly begins. The moment you stop fixing yourself, you finally have space to be yourself. Wholeness is a way of living, one where you no longer prepare scripts to manage life, because you're ready to step out exactly as you are. You realize you're a one-of-a-kind work of art. You don't need to be like anyone else, and you don't need permission from the world to be yourself. Closing real life doesn't begin when you reach an external milestone, nor when you become good in everyone's eyes. Real life begins the moment you stop running from your own dark corners, when you have the courage to face your shadow, harmonize the energies you abandoned, and most importantly, let your true self take the helm of the ship. When you've claimed your own life, you'll have an inner steadiness so deep that no event in time can shake it. From there, every failure or hardship simply becomes raw material that enriches the whole picture of who you are. If you have any questions or things on your mind about psychology in everyday life, your own story, or the people around you, leave a comment below so we can share and unpack them together in future videos. See you next time.